Welcome to A Founder's Life. I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Now, I'm excited today to be joined by Dave Grebetz. Dave, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dave Grebetz, founder of ClearCom Incorporated.
Thank you. So what I'd love to hear is your journey. You've sort of had quite a long journey of what you got up to that brought you to ClearCom, and then what ClearCom does for your customers, and what you're up to now.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, the opportunity to share my story. There's really no right way to go into business, and for me, it was something that I believe was always in the cards for me. I was always, when I was younger, I always had what the kids call today a side hustle. I was always working two jobs. I was always doing something on the side over and above my full-time job. And I remember early on buying, and I knew I wanted to go into business for myself when I was very young, but I really didn't know much about it. And I bought a book, and this was before the time of the internet and cell phones. And seriously, this book was about a guy that started a business, and he had a mail order business. So that was the internet of that time, was mail order. And he sold gardening equipment. And so that was where it started for me. And, I was fortunate enough in my career to be on the front side of many technologies. So when I graduated high school in 1979, I lived in an industrial town, and I got hired by one of the very good manufacturing companies, and they're a worldwide company today. It's JIK's company. It was a tractor plant. I was worked in the factory building tractors. And, my friends and family thought I'd hit the big time. Back then, a lot of people in our town didn't go to college because there were so many manufacturing jobs available with great benefits and pay. And so I went to work at Case, and I hated every second of it. And Reaganomics came along. After 1 year, I was there, and I got laid off. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I took some time back then, and I remember saying to my dad that I was going to take a year off because I had this comp package with pay, unemployment, and subpay and such that would carry me through for a year. And I said, Dad, I'm going to take this year and just goof around. And I went on some motorcycle trips cross country. My dad was really mad at me for doing it, but it was really a great thing for me to do. It gave me a chance because I thought, I might never have this chance again. And I was totally right. I didn't. So after a year, this new technology came to town called cable TV. And I always wanted to, when I was a younger man, wanted to be an electrician. Well, this is low voltage communications, right? And I got into it, and I had a real knack for it. So I spent 17 years in that industry, in that field, and actually with one company. Along the way, I worked my way up. And, when I was 30, I was, and again, I loved the job. I loved the challenge. I loved being outside. I loved everything about it and working with the clients. I was on a pole in a snowstorm. Snow's coming at me sideways. I'm fixing the cable TV because I was on call, and it was Christmas Eve. And I'm looking at a family in their window. I'm looking at this family down in their living room having Christmas, and my wife and kids were home. And I went back home that night, and I told my wife I'm going back to college at 30. So I did that, and I got an associate degree. My plan was to get a 2-year degree and then change jobs and then continue on to get my bachelor's. So I got my 2-year degree, and I had been working two jobs. I had been working a full-time job, a part-time job, and going to school for 6 years. Actually, like a little more than 5 years to get that 2-year degree. And it was tough. So it was some tough times. And I told my wife that I just want to take a year and work one job. I was getting a little burnt out. Literally a week later, I got a phone call from a company that I had started out with in the cable industry as a contractor, now 17 years prior. And they were looking for a project manager. And so I took that job. And that was my launch into the business world. I helped grow that business. I was there for 3 years, went from under $2 million in annual sales to over $6 million. and left there and went to work for their number one competitor in business development for 3 years, and then got picked up by one of our clients after 3 years with them, and again on the front side of a technology that was emerging, which was the fiber optic world. So I started building networks then. So I was building networks for 3 years, and while I was doing that, I was a sales engineer at that point. So I had really good field experience and client experience and, project management experience. And I said to the owner, I'm looking at blueprints every day and bidding jobs and engineering jobs. And I could see all of these security systems on the plans. And I asked the owner, why can't we do these camera systems or this access control or the intrusion or the fire alarm? And he said, Dave, we build networks. Well, one of the things I had identified is that all of these systems were falling on the IT guy's desk, right? And that technology again was emerging. So here we go again. I'm on the front side of another technology. So I started part-time, a little company. I incorporated it while I was still a sales engineer, called ClearCom. I built and digital video recorders were just starting to come out. IP addresses were a new thing. People didn't know much about it, and so I hired some guys to build me a website, and I started selling DVRs to companies, and I charged them monthly fee to access their equipment through my website. So that was the beginning of my recurring revenue journey, that monthly recurring revenue model. So the company was ClearCam. After 2 years, I worked 2 jobs for 2 years in 2000. That was in 2004, incorporated in 2006. I jumped in with both feet and changed the name to ClearCom. And then I got sued because there was a ClearCom already in California. It's a long story. Lawyers went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for months. One day I picked up the phone and I called them. And, this is kind of what you got to do, is just take things into your own hands sometimes. I was paying my lawyer to sort this out. And I just called the company and they said, oh, well, we can make a deal here. All you got to do is put security and communications under your name and people will know who you are when they go to your website. And it was over. So ClearCom was hatched. And from there, I hired my first full-time employee in 2007 and just really started growing the business. So that's the backstory. That's what got me to starting the business.
Excellent. That was quite some journey.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Those were really good years, by the way. I look back on those years, and when I was one guy in a van, it was very, very rewarding financially. It was profitable. It was fun. I was doing everything, and then that changes as you grow. And if you have one employee, you might as well have 20, right? And so that's the path I was on.
And then did you sell that business?
I did. I sold that business about a year and a half ago. Along the way, I grew it. I had a lot of challenges along the way. 2 steps forward, 1 step back all the time. And I grew it to a little over $5 million a year annual with a very strong EBITDA and recurring monthly revenue model. And there was a couple of things that happened that just made me say, maybe now's the time. I thought I wanted to be done by the time. I thought it was going to take me a couple of years to exit. Now, saying that, I was wrong, by the way. I closed. I had a buyer and I closed in 7 months. But saying that, along the way, everything I did, I always began with the end in mind. And so that things that I had done 20 years ago really benefited me in the sale of the company, at that point. And at the time, it was like, okay, do this. I talked to some consultants, and I was always good about talking to people that had been where I was. Try to shorten the learning curve as much as I could. I still made plenty of mistakes. Now that I'm not in the game anymore, I feel like I left. I was finally figuring it out. And maybe I should have stayed. But anyhow, that process of selling went pretty smoothly because of, again, all the preparation I had done over 20 years, to get it ready to sell.
That's what you want. Talk to us a little bit about how family looks for you.
Family. Well, I have two grown sons. They're 37 and 39 from my first wife. Connie and I were high school sweethearts, and we got married after high school, and had raised a family. Connie's really was a key element in me doing this. She supported always all of my crazy ideas of things I wanted to do. She knew I wasn't happy doing what I was doing, and she had a job with benefits and a good salary at the time, and supported my decision to go out on my own. At that time, let's see, I was 43 when I incorporated. So my youngest son was a senior in high school. So we were just about a senior in high school. No, he was in high school. Connie and I were empty nesters at 45. So, the timing was right for me to do it. I had the experience and, I thought I did anyways. And the timing was right in my life. And so she supported, so we did it. And it was great. Like I said in the beginning, and then in 2011, the day before Connie's 49th birthday, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she had then passed away 13 months later. In December of 2012, she had passed away. So that was, obviously a big, I don't know, I don't want to say milestone, but it was a big landmark in my journey. And then I'm currently married. I remarried. I met my current wife, Becky. I met her 8 years ago, and this August we'll have been married for 5 years, and I have two bonus children. Her children are 10 years younger than my children. So we have 4 kids between the two of us, and we have 2 grandchildren. So from my two sons, each one of my sons has a child. So it's a great time in our life.
Lovely. And how does health look for you?
In terms
of fitness, nutrition, sleep, mental health, however you look at things.
I look at all those things. So, I've always been super active. If you look at my bio, you'll see I have a lot of activities and sports I'm involved in. I started taking my health more seriously. I was always running, and, I always ran and did weight training so that I could to stay in shape to do all the things that I wanted to do. And after Connie got sick, one of the holistic doctors told us, that we really need to change our diet because she needed to stay healthy because of the chemotherapy. So we eliminated bread, pasta, red meat, and dairy from our diet, and went on this journey. And after she passed, I stayed on that diet. So now I'm in my early 50s, and I was in the best shape of my life. From 52 to 57, I was just ripped and just in the best shape of my life. And so I continued that, and it's really helped with all my other activities. To this day, I work out. I do weight training 3 days a week, and I run 4 days a week. My goal is to have 350 active days a year. I'm a skier, a paddleboard racer, a marathon runner. I do a lot of kayaking. So super, super busy. And, diet is key. Diet's 85% of it. So when you talk about the whole health package, I guess, it's diet and exercise. Now you can out-eat any exercise routine. So, I'm real conscious of my diet. Now, as I'm getting older, and so I met Becky. So let's digress a little bit. When I met Becky, I hadn't eaten red meat in 7 years. And on that date, I ordered a steak. And it was just like when I met her, I just, within 10, 15 minutes. I mean, I knew this is the gal. And I actually ate dessert that night too. And so Becky has taught me moderation. So now I enjoy some wine, and I'll enjoy a steak, and I'll enjoy dessert from time to time, but still really, really focus on our diet. And I take supplements regularly. Now, at my age, I just turned 65 last week, and I'm really focusing on my fourth quarter. and there's a lot of things that I want to do, and I really want to enjoy it as much as I can. So I take a lot of supplements as well. And, I'm just really, really hoping to stay active into my late 70s and hopefully into my 80s and, stay physically fit.
Yeah, so I love what you're saying. I think it all makes sense. I do believe anything in moderation, meaning it's absolutely fine to have dessert. Sometimes you feel like having dessert. It's just that shouldn't be the daily part of your meals. In the end, you got to enjoy things. You got to, it's about that moderation. I also run 4 times a week and weightlift 3 times a week. It's good to stay sharp. I don't have any goal to have 350 days a year of active, but I am usually at least that.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't really set that as a goal, but it just dawned on me one day, and then I started looking at it, and I used one of these apps to track my activity, and then I was like, oh yeah, let's see if I can do 350 days. Well,
Yeah.
when you're busy, when you have a full life, 350 days of activity is not hard, because it becomes part of who you are,
Yep. Yep.
and
Are
it's
you?
just it's part of your world.
Yeah, very much. Are you on Strava or something?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely on Strava. And so, you probably answered a lot of that, but what do you like to do for fun?
What do I like to do for fun? Well, right now we're doing a lot of traveling. And, I volunteer at the local resort on the National Ski Patrol. I've been doing that for 26 years. So downhill skiing is my primary passion. I started teaching skiing when I was 16 years old, and I taught into my mid-20s. And then, when the kids came and I went back to college, I was separated from being like professionally involved in this. And then I got on the ski patrol, and I'm in my 26th season of doing that. Other than that, I've actually taken up golf. Golf, I kind of used to laugh at my buddies that called it golf, that said they're getting exercise because they're playing golf. I never classified golf as getting exercise, but I guess it is if you walk. If you're walking the 18 holes. But, it became a very important part of my business towards the end when I was growing the business. And, I'll say about the last 4 years of owning the business were equally as rewarding as the beginning when I was starting it, because I had built a team that I trusted. I had built a really good client base. I was very embedded in my community, and with all, I was involved in, I'm still involved in a few of the local commerce organizations, but it became part of business. And so I really started enjoying playing golf. And now in my retirement, it served me well. I play a few times a week. I get to be outside. And I live on a lake here in Wisconsin. And our second home is in the mountains in Colorado. 2 homes that are positioned very well for the outdoor activity that Becky and I enjoy.
And what has been a pivotal moment in your life?
I guess that the one big pivotal moment for me is when I lost Connie, my first wife, because it's devastating. These things don't happen to you; they happen to other people, right? And it was a time when, at that time, I looked at where I was in my life and where I was in my business, and I made a decision to really, I think, I don't know exactly, but I had 4 or 5, maybe 6 employees at that point in my life, and I was renting some space. I had some what they call flex space here, office in the front, warehouse in the back, on one of the busier roads, in the community, in the city of Racine, actually right outside of Racine, but in Mount Pleasant, they're joined. And I knew that I really wanted to, that this was like an opportunity for me because, to really grow the business. Because if I fail, right, my kids are grown and gone now. And I always joked that I could go work at Walmart. I'll be fine. I could get a job if I flop, right? So at that time, I decided I wanted to be more of a regional service provider and not get pigeonholed into the community that I started the business in, which is along the shore of Lake Michigan between Chicago and Milwaukee. There's a corridor, the I-94 corridor, that connects the 2 cities. And I knew I needed to be visible on that corridor. And so I was going to move my company at that point, I'm going to move the business to I-94 corridor. Well, there's nothing available. I mean, this corridor in the Racine County where I live, that was all farm fields out there. And there was a golf course, and then there across the street from the golf course was a driving range and a mini golf place. And I couldn't find a place to rent. Along the way, one of my associates said, "Hey, call this guy, and he just bought the mini golf and driving range, and he's going to develop it." I called him, and his name's John Henderson. I said, "John, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm looking for." And I said, "If you build it, I'll sign a 15-year lease. And because this is where I want to be." I gave him my plan, and he bought in and said, "But the catch is this." He said, "I want you to have some skin in the game, so I want you to be my partner." And, I was not ready for that. And I came up with the money. I figured it out and put a down payment. And John and I built a multi-tenant building on that corridor. Now, again, going back to what I had said earlier, I was on the front side of another thing, right? Something that I saw years ago that corridor was going to be very, very sought after. And so that held true. I bought John out of that property 3 years ago. And within the last 2 years, this little technology company called Microsoft just bought hundreds of acres right down the street, right down the freeway from my property. And it's just a great location. They're building a data center there. A lot of that going on in the state of Wisconsin right now. But so that was, not only did that work out for me at this point in my life, but when I did it, it gave me the visibility that I wanted to the region. And so that really helped me grow my business from, I think I was just over $1 million a year in annual sales. It's a very small business and then, I got up to over 5 million in a short amount of time, in about, less than 10 years, more than quadrupled in size. So, that was huge. And now, as part of my exit, that building is under contract, and I'm hoping to close next month. And then that'll be the complete package, selling the assets of the company and selling the property, and I'll go enjoy my activities.
Nice. And what is one piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
One piece of advice: persevere. Don't ever give up. I had, over the years, there was multiple times where my advisors, meaning my banker, my insurance guy, my accountant, my lawyer, they recommended that I get out, close the doors. 2009 was the first time when the housing crash here in the U.S., things just dried up. There was nothing going on, and it was horrible. And I made it work. I mean, I'm not a very, I don't consider myself a businessman. Looking at it in hindsight, I guess I am, but I just looked at things logically and said, what do I have to do to survive here, right? I mean, I went down my list of expenses, and I went as far, I was doing things like canceling my newspaper, canceling the cleaning service. I cleaned my office. The one piece of advice is to really look at what it's going to take to keep going. Persevere. The term thinking out of the box doesn't really identify what I'm attempting to describe, but it's more about, like, for me, that failure was not an option. And, I had stepped back many times and reassessed. Along the way, I had a time when I was in a growth mode, and it was uncontrolled growth, which is so dangerous. And I got bit by that. And I had, again, it was a year that I lost a lot of money. My advisors all told me that you need to file bankruptcy, and I didn't. What I did was, again, I restructured, and I came back even better and even stronger. So I say rely on your advisors, but also stay true to your why. Identify what's your why and stay true to that. For me, this business was a vehicle for me to live the life I wanted to live. My why was because I wanted to do it my way. My why was because I wanted to build something. My why was because I really enjoyed and really got off on the hunt and the win, and the growth was so fun. And I knew that if I stayed true to that why, that everything would work out and I'd have enough money. And I did.
Lovely. And how can people find you?
Oh, you can find me on LinkedIn. I do a little bit of Facebook. I'm out there. That's about it lately. And yeah, I'm happy to mentor and help any entrepreneurs in any way.
Thank you. It's always good to be able to give back in any form. And thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. And again, reach out to me, anybody that's listening to this. You can find me on LinkedIn. If I can help you out, I'll be glad to do that.
Excellent. And thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell your friends. Leave a review. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo.